Welcome to Tabletop Gaming Guild. I'm Nathan Wilson, and today I'll be continuing my series of reviews on GMT games. Today I'll be looking at Urban Sprawl. A couple notes before we get started. The trays here do not come with the game. I provided these to make it easier to show on camera. Also, I will only be doing a quick overview of the rules rather than a full rules breakdown, for reasons I'll get into during the review section. Urban Sprawl is an economic simulation game in which you'll be gathering permits, building contracts, and running for offices, all to have the highest value buildings on the board. A turn in Urban Sprawl is broken down into 3 sections as denoted by your player board. The first thing you can do on your turn is invest. If you choose to invest, you can discard a permit from your hand and get money value noted at the bottom right. Whether or not you choose to invest, you would then continue on to the action phase. You have 6 points to spend during your action phase that can be spent to get permits, gain contracts, or earn favor. When you take permits, you pay the action points as noted by the space on the board, 1 through 5. When you get permits, you should note that every permit indicates the number of permits you get. It can be 1 through 4, the type of buildings it can be used for, and the value you get if you turn it in as an investment. The next possible action is gather contracts, and once again, you pay the value noted on the board in action points, 1 through 6 actually in this case. If I take this contract, for example, I would immediately have to pay the permits noted on the card of the building type. I would then place a building of the matching color that matches the size designated by the number of permits required, and place it on the board adjacent to a building of the same color, or no buildings at all, claim it, and pay the cost by looking at the row and column and adding that together. So in this case, that building would cost me 7 to build. Once a building is built, you would then follow the text on the card. Vocations allow you to take the matching vocation, so in this case finance, and then everybody who has a finance tile, including the person who just took one, gets to either take 2 money or 2 points for every finance tile they have. There are also cards that allow you to place wealth tokens. These are the tokens at the bottom of the board that you get to place in any gray location and change the value of the entire region of the board. So now if I wanted to build a building adjacent to this building, I would have to total up 3 plus 11 plus 4. Your third possible action you can take is acquiring favors. When you acquire a favor, you pay the action points required for the card. In future, you can play this card without spending any action points, but only then would you spend the permits required. The final phase of this game is cleanup. During cleanup, replenish the building permits, and the top card would be flipped. You would then pay out to the region indicated on the card. So in this case, Region 5 would pay out. You would then replenish contracts by flipping a contract, looking to see if it pays out, which is in this case it doesn't. This one does. So section 1 would pay out, and that's how a turn works. You'll notice though I've only talked about the permit deck and the town deck. I've not yet talked about city, metropolis, or town offices. The reason for that is those items are not unlocked at the beginning of the game. Somewhere within the second third of the town deck, you will reveal the airport card. The airport card will instruct you to hold elections for all the offices in a specific order, and then unlock the city deck. So once you've unlocked the city deck, you would also hold elections. Offices give you powers that you can use as long as you hold that office. The mayor is determined by vocations, but all the other offices are determined by who holds the most valuable building of a specific type. Ties are broken by other offices, so it's very important that your first election happens in a specific order. The other thing to note is all the offices give points at the end of the game. This brings us back to the permit cards. I did not mention before this little ballot box. This indicates that when this card is flipped, you would progress on the election track and hold a re-election for the office indicated. Again, roughly in the second third of this deck, you would find a card that triggers the next phase of the game. It also unlocks the contractor, and the contractor allows you to build over existing buildings, whether you own them or not. Finally, in the second third of the Metropolis deck, you would find Olympic Games, which triggers the end of the game and does one final scoring for every region. Two other things to point out is within the Permit deck and the Contract decks are hidden event cards. Event cards give bonuses or penalties to every player based on the text on the card. Also, one of the event cards causes you to reshuffle the Permit deck, adding in urban renewal cards, which function like a contractor by allowing players to spend this card to be able to build over somebody else's building. And that's how the game is played. I find Urban Sprawl to be a very heavy economic strategy game that players will like if they don't mind a little math. But we have to talk about a few things. First is the rulebook. This rulebook is written like a legal document. It explains everything in excruciating detail. It even goes so far as to explain how money works. Because of that, it's very easy to get overwhelmed by the amount of information in here and forget specific rules. The other thing to discuss is the amount of luck in this game. This is a heavy economic strategy game, so you wouldn't think there would be much. But similar to Settlers of Catan, if you choose to go into a region and that region doesn't come up very much early in the game, you can be set back quite a bit. On top of that, while the event cards are set up to only happen within the second third of this deck, if you're very unlucky and you're already behind, they can be very painful. There is a very powerful catch-up mechanic in the form of the contracted tile that allows you to build over other people's buildings. However, this comes very late in the game. The final thing to talk about is these wealth markers that can be added to the board. While I've definitely seen games where very few of these came out, I also saw one where almost all of them came out. In which case it can be very time-consuming to figure out what's the most valuable region in the board, what's the most valuable building of a type, and so forth, leading to longer and longer periods between turns. Now, I should say at this point that I have not played this game very many times because I had one game where luck went really, really bad for one player, myself, and that player was so far behind and kept getting hit by negative events that they really had no chance in this game. Now, that does seem to be an extreme case of bad luck, but be aware that the potential is there. Overall, Urban Sprawl is a strong economic simulation game that gives you a lot to think about during your turn, and if you don't mind a little math, it can be quite enjoyable. It's not particularly to my taste, but experience may vary.